What's up, guys? Welcome back. I am currently in the process of getting the Polo a bit more dialed in. After Helen, Georgia, as you guys already know, I got the car done enough to get down there and to drive around, but still had quite a long list of punch list items to finish on the car, to get things done right, but to also get the car ready for the giveaway or to sell. And yes, I'm still leaning towards doing a giveaway. I've never done one before, so as I've mentioned numerous times already in previous episodes, I constantly think about, the logistics, and I'm wading through this river for the first time. So that being said, I'm in the middle of that punch list. But the big part of the punch list at the very top was when I sectioned my tie rods down back a few episodes ago. If you guys are returning viewers, you know that I basically tubbed the front end of the Polo when I did the Mark I Golf suspension conversion on it, which went from a one-piece knuckle strut assembly to the two-piece Mark I Golf and Jetta style two-piece. And that set the strut body in on the car by over an inch, which allowed me to run the Rotiform LHR wheels in an 8-inch wide wheel up front and still sit flush. As far as I know, you can't do on a Polo, you can't really fit 8-inch wide wheels underneath a Mark I or II Polo. And I might be wrong there, but I've had a couple other Polos, and I had 7-inch wide wheels that almost touched the strut assembly and they almost poked out from the car. So from my experience, I was not able to ever fit an 8-inch wide wheel under the front of a Polo. So doing this conversion allowed the front to be tubbed essentially without messing with my lower control arm. But that meant I had to shorten my tie rods. And I took about 1.5 inches out of each tie rod to shorten them in. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough. So apparently what I'm doing is measure twice, cut twice type deal. So in the bandsaw, I've already got one cut done, is my passenger side tie rod. And I've got the tie rod ends here. This is the inner link or the inner end, and this is the outer tie rod end. And with these jam nuts off, you see I've got quite a bit of adjustment on each end. I mean, that's a solid 2 inches. And this one has probably 1.5 inches worth of threaded shank for adjustment. So now that I'm doing this a second time, I'm not afraid to go too far. I'm going to take a whole nother inch out. I'm basically only a 1/4 inch out from being book spec from my front toe in for my alignment at ride height. So I'm doing all this in my dad's shop. You guys have probably already noticed that. I live in the house out front, so it's easy for me to catch up on laser work and work on the Polo, but also have my father's fabrication tools here to just get this done with it on the lift. So I just cut my tie rod tube. I got one cut done and got the end off. So now what my second cut is I'm taking that inch section out. So what I'm doing in this next cut is ultimately shortening it. And then, luckily, from the first time I did this, I still have some of the rod I used that slides inside the tie rod tube that I'm using as my pin to ultimately weld to not only re-weld it properly, but reinforce that section that I took out. I'm basically doing it twice, and like I said, I wasn't even going to document this, but since this is taking up all my time, there's nothing else I'm going to be filming to get content out. So here we are. And this is what happens when you custom build stuff. This is just the reality. I know most of you guys watching this have already done all this stuff, or in different capacities. Like when you make custom stuff, you're your own R&D department. So I built a certain setup, took it to Georgia, drove it around for a week, realized, well, shoot, I need to fix this when I get home. So here we are. I'm home and I'm fixing it. All right, I got all the pieces cut, ready to weld. Basically what you're seeing here is the section I took out. That's about 1 inch. Prepped the edges and the inside of the actual tie rod tube that I'm going to be welding to. And this is the pin that I'm going to use for structural integrity inside the tube. So it's essentially going to sit in just like that. and I'm going to leave a little bit of the pin showing so I can not only weld to the bevels of both tubes, but actually to the pin as well. That way the pin doesn't not get welded and ultimately float inside the tube and completely being pointless to even be in there to begin with. So yeah, so that'll be about an inch shorter, and then I'll be able to bring it back out because I don't need to go an inch in, but if I do, now I can use my adjustment to bring it back out. And for any other application in the future, you should be able to go in and out as needed with this new narrowed style front end on the Polo. All right, got the tie rod welded up and got the welds cleaned up. I feel pretty good about its straightness. When you roll the rod, this is the side. Obviously, this is the new weld. The old union is in here. So yeah, it's got 2 pins. I did not plan on shortening this twice, but when you roll it, it doesn't have a crazy wobble. So it's relatively straight. I mean, and it's just steering. This doesn't have to turn. It's not like a CV shaft or anything like that, an axle shaft. It's just pushing the steering. So it's strong. It's got a pin in there. Cleaned it up. Gonna paint it, let it dry, get it in the car, and hopefully go for a drive. Get the alignment sorted out, and then hopefully go for a drive. All right, get the tie rod in. That inner mount is such a pain to get at because it's so far up in there and it's a real snug fit. And yeah, after battling with it, I've got the tie rod end hooked in here. Passes through the inner fender. And as you guys can see, the steering rack is mounted to the firewall up there. Right there. And yeah, it's just a real bizarre setup. The old Audi 4000s, B1, B2 Volkswagen platform cars. What we got here is the Dasher and the Quantum, but in Europe were the first and second generation Passats. The Volkswagen Foxes. Some of you guys may remember my Volkswagen I had like 11 or 12 years ago. Those all share very similar suspensions where the steering rack is mounted to the firewall, tie rods are behind the wheel, brakes are in front. Whereas the Golf and Jetta, Corrado, all those platform cars, brakes are in the rear, steering was up front on the subframe, tie rods were in the front. So they behave totally different. It's just a completely different setup. And that's why I had to build those steering arms up off the strut assemblies when I converted everything to the Mark I front end. All right, so I've got some measurements pulled just with a tape measure on the front and back of the wheels up front to just do a tape measure alignment just to get it within ballpark. I thought I was just going to jump in it and take it for a spin, but with that steering wheel not even close to being clocked in the right position, it would just mess with my OCD too much. All right, guys, let's go for a drive. is very underwhelming power-wise. This is a 1 liter 4-cylinder with an early fuel injection system from Volkswagen. It's a 91. It's fun to drive nonetheless. Boy, the thing feels great. Man, everything feels tight. We're driving it super low right now, and I love that's the one thing I love about those sleeve bags, is I can drive it at a super low height with mid-20s to 30 psi front and rear bags, and it feels great at a low ride height. I'm excited to bring this out to Brunswick, Maine next weekend for Fabrication Land. My friend Corey Sterling puts that show on. And actually last summer he was on my podcast. So if you guys go back a handful of episodes to about this time last year, I think it was about July, Corey was on my podcast. Hilarious dude, veteran. Now that I'm driving it and seem to have the alignment somewhat sorted out, I might be brave enough to drive it 2.5 hours out to Brunswick with Corey, our friend Ryan, and a handful of other people, or a few other people. I think it'd just be like 4 of us maybe. But I really would like to drive this car somewhere before I ultimately get rid of it. And the original plan is, some of you guys who have already been here on the channel may know, my original plan was to drive this to Helen, Georgia for Alpine Volks Fair. And just the tight timeline, it was clear that that was a really, really bad idea, and I'm glad I didn't. So I would like to drive it to a show that's out of town, but a 2.5 hour drive sounds way better than a 24-hour drive. Back from the drive, super stoked on how the Polo handles and drives. So I'm glad I filmed today. I wasn't going to. I was feeling pretty defeated that I had to like redo a lot of this work that I didn't want to redo. There's still more stuff that I haven't done yet that I need to do on the car. So I really felt like it was just redundant and taking steps backwards. But for how good the car drives now, I'm super excited. So I'm happy I was able to get all that done while multitasking and getting some stuff done in the laser shop as well. So I feel pretty good about today. Hope this was enough for an episode. This is where I'm going to end it. It's just about dark. Still have a few hours worth of work to do downstairs in the laser shop. So feeling pretty good about driving this to Vag Fair Vacation Land in Brunswick next week. Feeling pretty good. I'm going to try to drive it around my area all week this week and next week. Yeah, super stoked on the Polo. Thanks again, guys, for watching. Huge thanks to Rotiform. Again, everybody that worked out on this car. Rotiform for the custom LHRs. These are 2-piece welded, 15x8 all around. Bag Riders for all the suspension help on all my projects. I can't thank those guys enough. My buddy Rob at Dent Patrol for really working all the dents and little dings in this car all the way out. My buddy Aiden, who you guys saw in a few episodes ago, paint correct the car. Not really paint corrected, but buffed it out. Really got the car looking great. My friend Steve, who did the paint work on the bumpers. Yeah, it was a collaborative effort. ECS Tuning for getting me a lot of parts for the front end conversion, wheel bearings, and all sorts of other mechanicals. My friend Steve Paris in Wales helped facilitate shipping me a lot of components that I needed that were specifically from Europe for the drivetrain of the Polo, since we never got them here in America. I know a lot of you guys have been asking on Instagram about the podcast. I've been slacking real hard on the podcast. I invested in that whole deal, but it's been a whirlwind trying to get this car done for Helen, and now trying to catch up on work and continue to get this thing sorted out. Logistically trying to figure everything out for the giveaway, with just a bunch of other stuff on my plate as well. So I'm really hoping to sit down, even if I do a solo podcast, to get you guys up to speed in a long-winded format on the car, on the queue, on the laser shop, on some huge plans that are coming for me personally. Not necessarily hype plans for the YouTube channel or anything like that, but big plans for me personally that I haven't been blowing too much smoke about publicly, just because I want to make sure everything lines up. Everything's lined up, but there's no timeline for some of these things yet. So coming very soon, I'm going to kind of let you guys in on some big plans that are taking place in my life. But yeah, cutting the video there. Thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next episode.